Lucy Connolly has been denied her appeal to be freed from prison after spending multiple months inside for a tweet that she sent at the height of the Southport massacre, right before the protests and riots erupted in largely Labour heartlands last summer. If you don't know Lucy's story, she is a mother of a young girl. It's meant to be two children, but sadly her son Harry died as an infant due to NHS negligence. She's been diagnosed with PTSD for that, understandably. She's also a childminder and the wife of a Conservative councillor, a chap called Ray. And she was sentenced to 31 months in prison for a tweet that got about 300,000 views, and then she deleted it and denounced any of the unfolding violence after Axel Rudakabana, the second-generation Rwandan, murdered 3 girls and stabbed about 11 more people at a Taylor Swift dance class in the north of England last year. Now, Connolly had the Crown Prosecution Service and the police lie about her after her imprisonment. Alison Pearson's written an excellent write-up of this in The Telegraph. She spoke to Lucy repeatedly. Her reporting is the gold standard on this and is what got the likes of Suella Braverman, Liz Truss, Rupert Lowe, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, and a bunch of other high-profile figures like Dan Wootton and the Free Speech Union to come out and say that her imprisonment is unjust and she should be freed immediately. Well, in Alison Pearson's reporting, she notes that the police and the Crown Prosecution Service released a statement saying Lucy, quote, told officers she did not like immigrants and claimed that children were not safe from them. Now, that was a lie, and they only corrected it after Lucy's family requested to do this multiple times. What Lucy actually said was, in her long police interview, I'm well aware that we need immigrants. I'm well aware that if I go to the hospital, there are immigrants working there and the hospital wouldn't function without them. I'm also well aware of the difference between legal immigrants and illegal immigrants, and they are not checked, and nor is what they might have done, any crimes, in their country of origin. It's a national security issue, and they're a danger to children. Now, Alison notes this is a sentiment shared by millions of British people. In fact, including the Prime Minister, as of last week, so when Lucy was being interrogated by the appeals court over her views about immigration. This was just days after Keir Starmer had made his immigration speech and said Britain risks becoming a nation of strangers if we continue mass, illegal and legal migration. So he was even harder line than Lucy herself was in her original police interview, for which the CPS and the police took quotes out of context, contorted them to justify her imprisonment as a racist. And they even used previous posts where she was having banter with her friends, using pejoratives that denoted their region like Brummie. Now, unless Birmingham has become a race, and I don't think so, given how diverse Birmingham now is, that actual natives of Birmingham are a minority in their own city, I don't think that counts as racism. Do you? And it wasn't just the police and the Crown Prosecution Service that lied about her. The BBC, the state broadcaster, also, on a piece released on the 15th of May, said Lucy Connolly from Northampton used a social media post on the 29th of July to call for mass deportation now and urged followers to set fire to hotels housing asylum seekers. Now, 2 things there. If mass deportations is proof of Lucy Connolly being a racist, then Her Majesty's opposition, the Conservative Party, who, yes, conducted unprecedented levels of unwanted mass migration, the Boris wave was a betrayal, but have now adopted mass deportations as an official policy, and Reform UK, Independent MP Rupert Lowe, all of these people are legally racists, apparently, under UK law. So she is just adopting the policy of the party that her husband is a councillor for, and apparently, according to the state broadcaster, this is proof of racism. We're not shocked that this is the case culturally. Of course, they believe that any immigration restriction is by itself racism, even though Keir Starmer got up and said this at the press conference, that immigration needs to come down and it's not racist to be concerned about that. In 1988, he said that racism undergirds any and all immigration law, it permeates it. So this is the institutional culture, but it shouldn't be a legal standard if the second largest party in the country and the largest party at a local level and in the polls support the policy. And also, when it says that she said to set fire to hotels, that's not what she says. As you can see with the tweet screenshotted here, she said, and I quote, mass deportation now, set fire to all the effing hotels full of the bastards, for all I care, while you're at it take the treacherous government and politicians with them. Now, is that a sensible tweet to send? No. Would it meet the Brandenburg test for imminent incitement to violence under the First Amendment in the US, which is kind of the gold standard for free speech law? No, it wouldn't. It's just that she got tried under the Public Order Act of 1986 for incitement to racial hatred, because she insulted immigrants and politicians as a race, I suppose. Absolutely absurd charge. But if you notice, she didn't actively call to violence. She just said, do whatever you want for all I care. It was a flippant and ill-advised statement when the government were looking for any excuse to lock up their political opponents, and they still are. So I wouldn't advise anyone sending that tweet, but she should still not be rotting in prison for it, because it wasn't an imminent incitement to violence, and it's a tweet. And when people like Ricky Jones are currently out on bail awaiting trial, despite calling to cut the throats of counter-protesters to the stand-up-to-racism astroturfed foot soldiers on behalf of the regime, he did this on camera, and he has still not had his trial. It's been delayed till August, when Hugh Edwards, a notorious paedophile at the BBC, pleaded guilty to Class A images of child abuse. He got a suspended sentence, was not imprisoned. Mike Amesbury, the Labour MP who punched a constituent in the face in Runcorn and Helsby, triggering a by-election, also got a suspended sentence, saw no jail time. So why is Lucy Connolly rotting in prison for 31 months? It is because her opinions are that which are opposed to the regime, and this is a desperate attempt to clamp down on online speech to ensure that the government's multicultural narrative, despite rapidly repudiating itself in real time because of ethnic violence and cultural siloing and the sheer cost of unproductive mass migration, that multicultural narrative remains in place, that its reputation is unquestionable and undeservedly pristine. And so Lucy Connolly is being scapegoated as a political prisoner on behalf of diversity. And you can tell this because during her cross-examination, Laurie Wastell of the Free Speech Union was present at the trial and was live tweeting this. Lucy was asked, does she have strong views on immigration? Yes. Does she think children are unsafe because of illegal migration? Yes, only because they're milling about at the school gates and recording them. Does she feel threatened by immigrants? No. Does she hold a hatred of migrants? I do not hate migrants. The fact that she had to undergo this struggle session in the UK court delegitimises the entire UK justice system, especially because the judges couldn't reach a verdict on the day, they had a written verdict the following week, and they've still kept her in prison. And she is just voicing views that Keir Starmer himself now apparently holds, and she is sitting in prison because of it. She's sitting in prison because of her opinion about immigrants. The government exists to run a protection racket for the reputations, the unearned pristine reputations, of aggrieved minority groups and Muslims. And it is clear that Lucy Connolly is just a victim of that protection racket. In its closing statement, The Crown, that Laurie Wastell sums up, says, the post was a continuing reflection of her racist mindset. Other posts demonstrated her racist views. She clearly intended to stir up racial hatred and serious violence. Racial hatred and serious violence are not synonymous. Racism should not be a crime in this country, and I do not trust the state to accurately determine racism when it thinks that the phrase mass deportations is racist. I want to deport all the Albanian criminals currently in prisons. 1 in 50 Albanians in the UK is in prison, and they look pretty pasty to me. They think that discussing the grooming gangs, the composition of these child abuse gangs being predominantly Pakistani Muslim by all the available stats, they think that's racist. Hell, they've said that drinking milk is a sign of white supremacy. I don't think these people can determine what is and isn't racist credibly. And so even if I were not opposed in principle to making this form of speech a crime, in practice, it still is unworkable. So those are 2 damning strikes against the British judiciary. And the third is the fact that Lucy Connolly remains in prison while violent offenders walk free. Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood is now releasing thousands more violent offenders after 2 rounds of early releases, which saw that people that were guilty of committing manslaughter and domestic abuse and theft were all released. Well, now violent offenders and sexual offenders might be released early to ease overcrowding. And we know why they're doing this, because the prisons minister told The Guardian in March that they're doing this to make up more capacity in anticipation of more summer disorder. So they are freeing violent and sexual offenders in Britain early from their prison sentences to lock up more mums like Lucy Connolly who make ill-advised Facebook posts, or the likes of Judy Sweeney, or the likes, tragically, of Peter Lynch, the 61-year-old grandfather who shoved into a prison with a high Muslim population, as many of our prisons are, as many of them are now run by a group calling themselves the Muslim Brotherhood. It seems like he couldn't take the pressure, and combined with his health issues, it led him to commit suicide. We're still waiting on the coroner's report, but that seems the most likely. So the state killed that man, they killed a political prisoner, by throwing him to the wolves and calling him far right. And we know now that narrative is not true because of multiple reports that have come out and said, yes, the police contorted the narrative to protect the Muslim community. Merseyside Police Chief Constable said this herself. And that there is no organised far-right behind the Southport murders. The EDL is totally defunct, and it was actually just outraged parents and children in Labour heartlands who were upset about mass legal and illegal migration, regional poverty, and the murder of 3 children by someone whose identity was being concealed because we all knew that it wasn't going to be your average Welsh choir boy. So Alison Pearson wrote immediately after the review hearing, before the sentencing was handed down. She wrote up some of the statements that Lucy Connelly had said during her appeal. Lucy said, anytime people speak out about immigration, you're always racist. It's not racist. I just ignore it now. And Alison said she wanted to cheer during the courtroom, but obviously she wasn't allowed. The system has tried to make Lucy Connelly a sacrificial lamb, but she won't go meekly to the slaughter. And there is a substantive case for this to be made. She quotes a barrister in her piece that says, modern judges are weak. When we protected them from politics, they were amazing. Now, too many are low-grade politicians. To get appointed and to advance their careers, they must demonstrate a commitment to equality and diversity. This is how they all got captured, by pursuing self-interest. And the police themselves are doing this as well. We can see with the hate crimes operational guidance issued in 2014, on the back of the Macpherson report that alleged the Metropolitan Police were institutionally racist after the murder of Stephen Lawrence, that the police now police the private thoughts and social media posts and statements of citizens, whether they're deemed lawful or unlawful under the Public Order Act, the Malicious Communications Act, and the Online Safety Acts of 1986, 1988, 2003, and 2023. Whether or not they're lawful or unlawful, the police feel the need to police the private thoughts, speech, and statements of citizens to prove their anti-racist bona fides because they were once accused of institutional racism. So the British police are avowedly, ideologically anti-racist, which means that they are policing the opinions that the host majority hold of non-white, non-Christian, ethnic and religious minorities. So the police act as a morality enforcement squad protecting those minorities against the host majority, which is paying them and forced to accommodate their increasingly tribal subcultures. And that's gotten to the point now where the police are arresting 12,000 people a year, 30 to 33 people a day. And even The Economist is writing about this. You know that you've gotten beyond the pale when even The Economist, the one of the wettest, most establishment outlets, goes, ooh, looks a bit bad now, doesn't it? And it points out that the problem largely stems from the 1988 Malicious Communications Act and the 2003 Communications Act, but also the 1986 Public Order Act. And these were passed by a mix of Conservative and Labour governments. They all need to go to ensure the likes of Lucy Connelly are never locked up again. And I remember being raised in GCSE history class and being told that the worst things that ever happened were slavery and the 2 world wars. And this means that the Nuremberg standard, that just following orders is not an accurate defense, has persisted throughout my lifetime. Now, we all know it went out the window during COVID, when everyone and their nan became a curtain-twitching government informant if you went on more than one of your daily government-allowed walks every day or sat too close to someone on a park bench who were below the age of life expectancy. Nevertheless, we apparently are told that wearing a uniform and just following orders is not an accurate defense for doing something immoral. However, it seems that institutional culture has police conform to increasingly censorious standards to stay on the safe side, get a promotion, and ascend up the career ladder and keep their job. And they even have to dob in on other officers and say that they've made racist or misogynistic comments in order to get ahead. So there's a perverse incentive for ideological compliance within the police. Keir Starmer himself wrote the handbook on how to apply the 1998 Human Rights Act for judges. So lots of the judges' malicious rulings are done not just because of the law, but because of the guidance which follows the law, which is written by ideologues like Keir Starmer. If you remove the yoke of complying with these malign laws dressed up in this benign language, you reconfigure the incentives for Britain's institutional culture, and you can get back to a common law, free speech, culture, and law again. And so some government needs to be brave enough to propose and do this. So far, it's only the likes of Robert Jenrick and Rupert Lowe saying we're going to get rid of the Race Relations Act, we're going to get rid of the Equalities Act, we're going to get rid of the Malicious Communications Act to ensure that free speech flourishes. But this needs to be written down in a giant repeal bill and put to the public as one of many manifesto pledges, and the likes of Lucy Connolly make the public very sympathetic to this plight. Because the British do not like their ancient liberties being trampled on, and increasingly, when the justification is they need to be trampled on to accommodate the hurt feelings of these increasingly tribal minorities who hijack democracy by voting as ethnic and religious blocs, and they have nothing but contempt for your way of life and want to fundamentally change it without a democratic mandate, well, then the British public are going to be pretty sympathetic to getting rid of that. Also, people are going to turn around and say, well, she pled guilty, so therefore she's guilty. As Toby Young of the Free Speech Union, now Lord Young, told myself and Harrison Pitt on Deprogrammed a little while ago, lots of these Southport political prisoners got really bad legal advice, and they were swept up in the working round-the-clock magistrates' courts that Keir Starmer mobilised to convict them quicker. And they were told that if you plead guilty and don't draw this out, you'll be home by Christmas, which was faulty. This is what Lucy herself was told, and this is why she pled guilty and expected to see her daughter, and now she's been not only denied bail, which, as Alison Pearson points out, is something usually afforded to sex offenders, but apparently not a mum who sends an ill-advised and deleted tweet, but she's also been denied the ability to visit her family in the nighttime and to see her daughter, and her daughter is currently going off the rails without her mum being present, has been suspended from school. So this is clearly taking a toll on the family, but these activist and ideological judges do not care. And Alison Pearson has written up after the verdict and spoken to Lucy and gotten some new comments where Lucy says that she thought if she pled guilty, she would be allowed out earlier. And she was sentenced by a judge who, his name's Judge Melbourne Inman, who at the start of her sentencing said, "It is a strength of our society that it is both diverse and inclusive." So she wasn't shocked that she didn't get bail, and she's not shocked now that she has been punished for speaking to the media by the prison governor, that she's been denied right of temporary leave. And the judge himself didn't care about her diagnosis of PTSD, didn't care about her anxiety attacks, didn't care about testimonials from Nigerian, Bangladeshi, and Jamaican parents who she was minding the children of as a childminder. And he then imposed a vastly disproportionate sentence upon her. So you might be asking, who is this guy? Well, Jonathan Miller in The Spectator wrote a piece about Judge Inman. He's apparently aged 68. He's the recorder of Birmingham, but he can't find anything from about 24 sources that he scoured on this guy's career history. And it's no shock because the 2005 Constitutional Reform Act that Tony Blair passed through meant that the Lord Chancellor no longer appointed judges, and instead a Quango, the Judicial Appointments Committee, now does it in a back room. So ideological judges appoint more ideological judges, so they just self-propagate and contaminate the system with ideology. And so this guy might have had a dreadful career, for all we know, before he has been appointed someone who is making these kinds of decisions over the lives of Lucy Connolly. And he's made some questionable other decisions as well. So he sentenced a chap called Antonio Boparan, and Boparan pleaded guilty to causing death by dangerous driving after he killed a young girl, and Inman only gave him an 18-month sentence, and he served fewer than 9 months. So he's serving less and was sentenced to less than Lucy Connolly for killing a child. He also gave a schizophrenic, Mohammed Abkar, who said that he was possessed by demons, and so he had to pour petrol over 2 fellow Muslims in a mosque. He didn't give him any prison time, he just gave him a hospital stay. So Mohammed Abkar, who, frankly, should not be in the country in the first place to pour petrol over and set fire to other people, other innocent people, he gave him a nice comfy hospital stay with a flat-screen TV and ice cream at bedtime. But Lucy Connolly gets no bail, 31 months in prison, and can't even see her daughter after already losing her son. And Inman, around the same time of Lucy Connolly's sentencing, sentenced a chap called Habib Khan. He was arrested on the 7th of August for posing with an AK-47 in a video that he recorded of himself, saying, "EDL, we're coming to effing blow you away, you mother effers. Hey, Tommy Robinson, you want to play rough, eh? Okay, come on, you want to play rough, I'll blow you away." So an actual threat of violence. And if you look at Khan, I mean, he's got the centuries of cousin marriage displayed on his face. No wonder his low impulse control led him to have 11 previous convictions for 15 offences, including actually a racially aggravated public order offence in 2009 and 2013. So the exact thing that Lucy Connolly was tried for, he already had 2 of before being tried for this. Judge Melbourne Inman KC said that he only needed 27 months in prison. So less than Lucy Connolly, despite having 11 previous offences, and actually threatening violence to specific people using a specific weapon. This guy is a demented ideologue. And Judge Hollyroyd, who denied Connolly's appeal among the panel of 3 judges as well, he decided to reduce Labour peer Nazir Ahmed of Rotherham, of course. He decided to reduce his sentence for 3 sex crimes, including attempted rape, from 5 years to 2.5 years. So, paedophiles, rapists, attempted murderers, actual killers of children, they all get less time from the same judges than Lucy Connolly does for an ill-advised tweet. Now, I want to finish by contrasting this with Tommy Robinson, who an hour before Lucy Connolly was curiously let out of prison, or at least had his sentence ended, and he's going to be let out of prison later this week, after spending 7 months in solitary confinement. And no matter what one thinks of Robinson, his conditions were pretty appalling. He was apparently kept in solitary confinement for his own safety, but that's just an indictment of the UK prison system, considering it's so overrun by Muslim criminals. I think 18% of the prison population is Muslim, despite only being officially 6% of the population. So disproportionate overrepresentation there. It's an indictment of the UK prison system that it couldn't keep Robinson safe and had to put him in very punitive conditions for a civil offence. A civil offence which was brought forward, by the way, by Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, the highest lawyer in the land, a political appointment, over X because Robinson wasn't in the country. So that's an unprecedented intervention by the government. So the government has been involved at all stages in Tommy Robinson's case, and they were involved here today. Keir Starmer had a lawyer present at the appeal hearing. This is Adam Pater, who was outlining whether or not Robinson had gone through sufficient efforts to take the video down, not just from his own social media accounts, but had requested that others, like Jordan Peterson, also do so. And they demonstrated that Robinson had gone above and beyond, via the people that still have access to his social media accounts, to do this and pursue this, and those who hadn't taken it down had left the video up in defiance of Robinson's wishes. They were, of course, referring to Silenced, the film that was ruled libelous in 2022 that Robinson showed to a crowd of thousands in Trafalgar Square in 2024. Why was Starmer's lawyer present at this? Well, not only has the government been involved at all stages, but it seems to me that Tommy Robinson is a more acceptable political prisoner for the government to release at this time than Lucy Connolly. If they release Lucy Connolly, they admit that lots of people were unjustly locked up for peaceful protest and ill-advised words on the internet, but nonetheless words, and so the entire Southport narrative about it being far-right racism is repudiated. Peter Lynch died completely unjustly in prison. We all know that, but the government has not admitted that. They have stayed stum about that and the prison conditions that they have created through mass immigration, multiculturalism, and Islamic appeasement. If they free Lucy Connolly, they admit this. Whereas, if they free Tommy Robinson now, when Reform UK are the largest party at the local level, when they are the largest party in polling consistently, when Labour and Keir Starmer have admitted that Nigel Farage is their greatest worry and he's most likely to be Prime Minister in 2029, if they unleash Tommy Robinson, they can drive a wedge using the media between the majority voting public, who might still be squeamish about Robinson because he's been turned into the bogeyman of the absent far right in Britain, and Nigel Farage, who has denounced him at every turn because he's worried about the electoral implications, and I think he just doesn't like Robinson's tactics and doesn't want anything to do with him and is generally annoyed by his presence. So Keir Starmer can beat up on Tommy Robinson as a far-right bogeyman if he's still active in the streets and if he's still making social media content. And he can be a permanent thorn in the side for his greatest rival, Nigel Farage, whereas Lucy Connolly is a much more acceptable martyr, which is why she's been endorsed by members of Her Majesty's opposition, up into including Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition. So Keir Starmer, the government, the judiciary, does not want to free Lucy Connolly because she makes for a much more difficult face of the movement of political prisoners of two-tier justice than Tommy Robinson does. Many more people can get behind, or they feel they can get behind, Connolly than Robinson. So I have to wonder just how strategic releasing Robinson and keeping Connolly in prison is a move by the regime and by the government. And it seems that Lucy Connolly has been kept in prison to uphold the false multicultural narrative that diversity is Britain's sole strength.